I'm going to quote Derek James here, who is the trainer of Errol Spence Jr. He said the following: I think that the game changer was Al Haymon. If you think about it, in the history of boxing, there's only a couple guys making money, making $1 million, making a couple $100,000. Even though Bernard Hopkins say he was the champ for all those years, he was only making like $75,000 a fight, something like that, I heard. So if you think about it, now with Al paying the guys what they were worth, everybody else had to do it to compete. So he made Bob Arum start paying, made Matchroom, made all these guys start paying the fighters. So all these fighters that may talk bad about Al or whatever they say, they have to pay homage, because it would not be like that had it not been for Al Haymon paying his fighters the way he pays them, because that made everyone else have to contend, have to pay more money. Now Matchroom overpays people just trying to compete, you know? Certain guys who's making millions of dollars now are not multi-million-dollar fighters. So they have to thank Al Haymon. He goes on to say, how many fighters make millions of dollars? A lot of them, all around the world. So that's due to Al Haymon pushing the envelope, really making guys pay kids what they're worth, fighters what they're worth. All right. Now, I think that Derek James is partly right, but only partly. I think it's right to say that Al Haymon at one time in boxing did push the envelope and did start getting fighters paid more money. But at the same time, there were other promoters who were also pushing the envelope and getting fighters paid a lot more money. And in more recent times, Al Haymon hasn't been doing that. He's actually been doing the opposite. Al Haymon has been offering some of his fighters terrible advice and actually talking them out of career high paydays. We saw that with Deontay Wilder turning down the Anthony Joshua fight several times. We saw that with Adam Kownacki turning down the Anthony Joshua fight. We saw that with Luis Ortiz turning down the Anthony Joshua fight. So, and of course, we've seen Errol Spence Jr. and all the other PBC welterweights not fighting Terence Crawford. And that would be a huge payday for any of them. So lately, Al Haymon has not been doing a good job in pushing the envelope and getting his fighters the most amount of money. He's actually been doing the opposite. Furthermore, with regards to Bob Arum, I wasn't really paying too much attention to exactly how much he was paying fighters, let's say 10 years ago. But when it comes to Eddie Hearn being based in Britain, long before he ever made any forays into the United States, he was paying fighters very well in the UK. Maybe not as well as he's paying them now, but that has got less to do with Al Haymon and more to do with DAZN. DAZN really have had the biggest impact on fighters' purses in the United States particularly. Far bigger impact than Al Haymon. Because if you look at the money that Al Haymon fighters were getting prior to DAZN launching and then compare it to now, it's gone through the roof, because Al Haymon has had to up his game for certain fighters to compete with what DAZN are doing. DAZN have been so aggressive in the American market, it has forced Bob Arum as well, Al Haymon, all of them, to start paying the fighters way over the odds. The best example, of course, is Deontay Wilder. Look at Deontay Wilder's purses before Eddie Hearn and DAZN launched in the US. Wilder was making $2 or $3 million a fight, sometimes less than $1 million a fight for his world heavyweight championship defenses. But as soon as he sparks up this rivalry with AJ and DAZN launches in the US, Eddie Hearn's over there, all of a sudden, Wilder's purses start going up. It's not a coincidence that it was happening the same time that Eddie Hearn and DAZN are launching in America. It's not a coincidence. And of course, the biggest example of this would be when Deontay Wilder turned down the DAZN deal. His people, Al Haymon, etc., they had to convince him that they could pay him close to the same amount that he was being offered by DAZN. Or else, why would he turn the deal down? So they paid him way over the odds for the Dominic Breazeale fight. They paid him way over the odds for the Luis Ortiz rematch. I mean, they probably lost an enormous amount of money, particularly for the Breazeale fight, but probably the Ortiz fight as well. And, you know, judging by the information that we have publicly with regards to the break-even point, they lost money, even though it seems to be ESPN who were fronting up the promotion more so than Fox PBC, but they probably lost money on the Tyson Fury rematch as well. Again, this is down to the fact that they are paying the fighters way more than the fighters are actually worth. This is what it's about. Otherwise, you don't lose money on a show if you're not overpaying the fighters. Yeah, that only comes about when you're overpaying them. When I say overpaying them, again, it's about paying them more than you can actually recoup from them by putting a show on. And it was DAZN and Eddie Hearn who forced Al Haymon and forced Bob Arum, etc. to do that. There was a time when Al Haymon first came on the scene, when he had boxing on multiple different networks, when there was several British fighters who actually signed with Al Haymon, the likes of Lee Selby, the likes of James DeGale, the likes of Carl Frampton. Okay, some of you may remember this. And during that time, Al Haymon was paying some fighters better than Eddie Hearn was paying. Okay, but certainly he wasn't paying as well as, let's say, Eddie Hearn was paying Anthony Joshua. Because, of course, Anthony Joshua got Charles Martin to come over to the UK. Charles Martin was an Al Haymon fighter. Charles Martin wasn't going to get that kind of money, the kind of money he got against AJ, from Al Haymon. Eddie Hearn paid him that money. Okay? So let's be real about this. But as I say, there was some occasions where, yes, Al Haymon, several years ago, back in the early days of Al Haymon, he would pay fighters well, which is, again, the reason that James DeGale decided to base himself in the States. He said Al Haymon's paying great money, so that's the reason he's gone over there. And that's fair enough. But it didn't last that long. And I'm not saying Al Haymon doesn't pay a good amount at the moment for the majority of fighters, but he's not paying the crazy figures that Eddie Hearn's paying the likes of Anthony Joshua, certainly, and even other fighters in Eddie Hearn's stable. Dylan White. Dylan White has never had a world title shot, and he's a millionaire. Can you name me an Al Haymon fighter who's never had a world title shot, but they're a millionaire already? And again, he built Dylan White up to that point before he ever went to America. And I'm talking about Eddie Hearn here. Before Eddie Hearn launched in America, Dylan White was already a millionaire. Right? Think about that. It really all started for Eddie Hearn in terms of paying fighters really well with Carl Froch. Carl Froch was in the what was it called now? The Super Six. The Super Six super middleweight tournament. He was in that. He didn't win it, obviously, but he got to the final and he fought Andre Ward there. After that, he fought Lucian Bute, and he, won the IBF World Championship off Lucian Bute. And of course, the rivalry with George Groves. That is really what blew up the whole Matchroom Eddie Hearn thing. Eddie Hearn was building and building and building prior to the Carl Froch, George Groves rivalry, because Froch was doing, good numbers and stuff like that. But after Froch Groves won, that's when it went to a whole new level. And during this time, obviously, Anthony Joshua was also being built as a star. So these two things combined, Carl Froch, Anthony Joshua, then, of course, Kell Brooks started coming into the mix. And all these different fighters under the Eddie Hearn banner started pushing the envelope and generating interest in boxing. You see, it's not just about a new player coming into the game and paying fighters or overpaying fighters and therefore forcing the competition to do the same. No, that's only viable if there is sufficient fan interest. And Eddie Hearn in the UK was able to build a massive amount of fan interest, more interest in boxing than we'd seen in the UK for a very, very long time, since the 1990s, truth be told. So, he's the guy that actually did that. So again, while it is true that Al Haymon did have an impact on boxing when he first came into it, he did maybe push the purses up a little bit, but that didn't last very long. And if anything, I would say DAZN and Matchroom have had a much bigger impact on fighters' purses than Al Haymon. Because again, just look how dramatically the purses have gone up since Eddie Hearn and DAZN launched in America. It's crazy how dramatic it is. Anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. I'm just being real, people. I know people are, oh, you're a Matchroom fan. Listen, if you tell the truth, you tell the truth. The truth is what it is. Do you know what I mean? Am I lying? How many Al Haymon fighters do you know who are millionaires and they've never even had a world title shot? Well, Dylan White is that. Do you know what I mean? So the truth is the truth, people. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. It's happening out. Join me on Patreon. I upload a minimum of 2 podcasts every single week, covering a wide variety of controversial topics, as well as live stream Q&A sessions. Take a look on screen right now at some of the podcasts I've produced so far. For just $3 a month, the equivalent of about £2 a month, you get access to all my new podcasts and my entire back catalogue of past podcasts, including my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. You can listen on your computer or on your smartphone or tablet by downloading the Patreon app from the Google Play Store or the App Store for free. The Patreon app also allows you to download each podcast in MP3. For less than the price of a cup of coffee, you get access to dozens of hours of exclusive content. It's easy to sign up, there's no contract, and you can cancel at any time. So come and join our community of free and critical thinkers by signing up with me here on Patreon today.